Welcome back to the Big Pro Football Show. Ryan Poles has not been afraid to utilize the trade market during his tenure. He's averaging 5 trades a year, quite a hefty number by NFL standards. Specifically, he's recently shown a tendency to trade away draft capital for veteran players and not the other way around. Guys, do you like this aggressiveness, or are you afraid that this is something that could potentially come back to bite the Bears?
Well, I think you're always having that fear when you trade away draft picks. Every team says they want to be draft driven. And then you see a record like this and you wonder, do you really mean it? Because what's interesting about the way Ryan Poles has operated is that he is known best for making the big trade with the Panthers that defined his tenure. His defining moment as a GM isn't really what defines his tenure, because that one trade, which everybody knew he had to make, there are the details, and the details are still staggering, and the Bears are still benefiting that for years to come. But what really you're looking at is the body of work. He's gotten rid of a lot of draft picks for players that haven't always been worth it. And I think that's where he got himself into some trouble.
And he's got rid of some high draft picks. The 2 trades that irk me the most, and you know I've talked about this before, the first one is the Chase Claypool trade. That's a first-round pick you gave away for Chase Claypool. You missed on a guy that was a first-rounder. The second one was more forgivable. I mean, this one you can argue, but when you have Montez Sweat, who is going to be a free agent, yes, he might not have made to free agency, but you give up a 40th overall pick for just the rights to sign him when you could have waited to free agency and signed Danielle Hunter, Jonathan Grenard. You could have had another big-time player there and a free agent. So to me, those were not smart usages of trading your players.
I would say, though, when you look at this year, Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, yes, you would make that deal.
I would make those deals
every day of the week. Then you look at last year, I think Montez Sweat, you have to give up something to get something, Clay.
That's what I mean. A free agent,
you don't want to be a hypocrite because you look at what they gave up and it was something, but you always want the production because you always think you're closer than maybe you are. Keenan Allen, he was washed, right? But you felt like, well, you never quite know. You have a rookie quarterback, you want to get a veteran receiver. It makes sense. It's only a 4th-round pick. But you can talk yourself into those things, and all of a sudden, you look at, and this is your ledger. This is your record.
You want to build through the draft, but I think it's also very tempting for general managers, front offices, to look at established veteran players who they know are proven and have a work ethic and a reputation around the league. I just think there's less risk than maybe having to evaluate a rookie in the draft and what they could be, how that translates to the NFL. Obviously, you want to hit on all those picks, but when you have veterans that are out there that you know are proven, such as a Montez Sweat, and you look at the way that he changed that season, of course, last year, I think, did not live up to expectations, but I'm not ready to poo-poo the Montez Sweat trade yet.
No, me either.
I'm ready.
No poo-pooing.
It's just you're missing an extra player. You go to free agency, you keep your 40th overall pick, which ended up being Cooper DeJean, who was one of the best players in the NFL. He's ranked as a top 50 player in the NFL this year. And then you look at some, I know you're getting rid of late-round picks, but Joe Thuney, 3rd-round pick. Drew Dahlman, 4th-round pick. There's some of the guys we're talking about. Trey Hendrickson, 3rd-round pick. You can find players and primetime players during these picks. What is your scouting department doing when they're on the road all year round?
You know what they're doing? Speaking of 4th-round picks, they're finding punters in Australia, which brings us to our rookie review. Tory Taylor, today we will give him a grade. Tory Taylor is Ruthie's favorite rookie.
My favorite player.
The punter from
in the
down
history
under.
Of the NFL.
Was this worthwhile, a 4th-round pick on a guy who was maybe their best special teams player?
I think it was a little bit of a cocky pick at the time. You know, they thought they were ready to be drafting punters in the 4th round. They thought they had everything they needed. I will say, I think Tory Taylor, you know, you go back to that conversation where Caleb Williams texted him that he wasn't going to be punting very much. In fact, they needed him to be punting a lot. So I don't hate the pick. Perhaps they would have won 3 games or 4 games, not 5, if they didn't have Tory Taylor.
Clay, if you're a player on this roster and you saw them use a 4th-round pick on a punter, what's going through your mind?
I was like, you didn't have any offensive linemen on your board? I mean, your offensive lineman you could have helped your 1st-round quarterback with instead of bringing in the punter. But obviously, Tory Taylor, excellent job. But could you have maybe found a decent offensive lineman? Just talked about 4th-round Drew Dahlman. You couldn't find players in the 4th round that are serviceable players that can step in.
Punters are people too.
Also, they are people too, and you do have to respect the job. And you had a defensive-minded head coach at the time with a defense that was set to dominate, and he was going to be your 12th defender. I get it because, like Flusy used to say, who doesn't love the punt and pin? Because you want to get the team those hidden yards, you want to win that battle. it just didn't work out because the rest of the team stunk. He was very good,
Yeah.
and I
Right.
think he justified the draft pick by being as good as he was.
I will just say, everything I've heard about Torrey Taylor as a person, as a worker, I've heard that if every single player in the NFL worked as hard and cared as much as Torrey Taylor cares about punting, he'd be in the Super Bowl every year.
And
He
that's-
is someone that takes his job so seriously and cares so deeply about his role and works really hard, and you see it pay off every single week in and week out.
That matters. That's contagious. I mean, that
yeah.
means something.
Yeah, whether
Special
you're a punter or
teams-
not.
Yeah, special teams do matter to the Bears.